Hey everyone, welcome to this, as you can see up there, the top 5 Sonic issues of 2011. And you probably know how a countdown goes. Number 5 is not the most popular, number 1 is the most popular and probably the best of the year. So sit back, relax, and let's get started with this issue at number 5. Okay everyone, you just saw what number 5 is, and let me explain why issue 232 is number 5. Now, I will be honest with you, I've said this many times before, it's because I'm keeping my promise. I have not opened my issue yet, but from what I've heard and read through summaries, through videos and all that, apparently the main story was a bit of a letdown. Now, some people may argue differently, but there are others, others that feel it's been a letdown. And like I said, others will argue differently, but it looks like, from what it sounds like, a very small majority will argue differently. Well, you got a major majority that doesn't like what's going on. Essentially, basically, a lot of the plot points in there just just feel a little weird. I mean, one point you have Jeffrey St. John just take the crown off of Elias and put it on Naugus, and everybody follows Naugus just because Naugus healed Bunny and de-roboticized her. Okay, that would make sense in a way, but it doesn't. You think Elias would kind of hold on to the crown a little bit and say, "What are you doing?" It just doesn't make sense. You can't just put a crown on somebody and say, "Here's your new king." That doesn't make sense. Now, I will give credit. I will give credit to the 2 new writers that did the backstory. From what I understand, they did a very good job at presenting Bunny's how Bunny is feeling, kind of her aftermath of being de-roboticized. But now and with the fact that she has to deal with, does she want to move on with her life and probably start anew, or what's going to happen? And basically it's kind of complex for her, and I give the 2 new writers credit on that. But there are some nitpicks as well. Some people have nitpicked at this that have caused it to be at number 5 in my opinion, which is 232, that is. And that's the fact that she doesn't even seem, according to others, to be concerned about her friend, her best girlfriend, if you will, Sally Acorn, being roboticized. It's like she doesn't even mention that or talk about it. And some people do nitpick about it. And that's what caused this issue to go to 232. Me personally, I can understand why Bunny wouldn't want to look at that, probably wouldn't want to mention it. She probably knows, but she doesn't want to look at that right now. She's looking more at the shock value of what she is, of what has happened. But initially 232, which is full of holes and everything, and then the last panel, in my opinion, really is kind of, didn't sit well with a lot of fans. In fact, there was one person, I think it's called Alone, here on DeviantArt, which I have right here, called Alone in the Room, that kind of made this little art thing that had the picture, the last panel in the main story, and it had a little subtitle under it called Ian Flynn, Raping Your Childhood, One Character at a Time. And to me, like I've said many times, I respect Ian Flynn. I think he's got potential as a writer. But to me, this really kind of makes things complex because, a lot of people probably saw this coming like I did, and it just makes people, worry. It's like, what's the deal? Why go in this direction? Why put a blowtorch to her face? I mean, what are you going to do? Implant something inside her? Are you going to take her head off so she could switch bodies? I mean, what's the deal? Nobody really knows, and they just feel this whole thing with happening with Sally is just nonsense. So, maybe, like I said, there's a majority out there that probably will agree that's a great issue and everything. They side with Dean, that's fine. That's their opinion. But then there are those that, are against this, and that's what makes issue 232, in my opinion, the number 5 issue of the year. Again, some of you may disagree with it, some of you may not. Okay, as you just saw there, number 4 is 230. That's right, issue 230. Now again, just like with 232, I did not open the issue. But initially, there's a lot of people that don't like 232. I mean, not 232, but 230. Some people don't like it. Now, I will say this. 230, I will say this. From what I saw, looks like it was well done, except for the ending. Because to me, the ending, and I've said this before, and I know a lot of people may or may not agree with this, but to me, the ending made Sonic look like a complete idiot. It did. It did make him look like a complete idiot. I mean, okay, I will admit Sally doing what she had to do to save her friends and her family and everybody. Yeah, I will admit that was good. That was a good moment, but it just didn't make sense. I mean, again, overall the story, from what I understand, sounded good. Sounded like a good implage to the whole Genesis deal. But again, it just didn't make sense. It just didn't make sense at the end when you have Sally turned into a robot. I mean, again, I understand and see the positive in her trying to do what she has to do. But still, it just didn't make sense. You don't think she couldn't have just called Sonic and say, Sonic, we got to go real quickly before, or, you don't think she could have called Sonic right there and said, Sonic, me and Nicole have inverted the beam to hit the Death Egg. Let's go. We got to go. You don't think she couldn't have said that? I mean, I met there are some that would argue that she didn't have time to do it. But to me, I think she did. I think she honestly did. But again, like I said, the end, overall, it sounded like the story was okay except for the ending. Because the ending made Sonic look like a complete idiot. I mean, here you have Sonic in the Genesis arc. Well, basically, here you have Sonic not being able to rescue her in the anniversary, at the end of the anniversary issue. And then here you have Sonic restoring time at the end of 229 and going into 230 to save her. And yet she ends up in the situation she's in, and it makes him look like an idiot. It makes him look like, why did he even bother doing this if this was what's going to happen? Didn't make sense. But again, what can I say? 230 at number 4. Like I said, started out good, had its moments, but at the end, it just made the main hero look like a complete jerk. Not a complete jerk, but look like a complete fool, a complete idiot. That's what it made it look like. So that's why 230 is number 4 on this countdown. Okay, everybody. Right there, you probably saw it. Number 3 is the first issue of the Genesis arc. Well, let's just say Genesis overall. That's right, all 4 issues, the first to the last. And I have to say, I know a lot of people felt that it just didn't make sense, for Genesis to take place the way it did. To me, I feel Genesis had its place, but I think it could have been done. I mean, I've argued this, not argued, but, probably argued a bit, but I kind of pointed out the fact that Genesis could have been its own separate comic. Back in the day, and I know it makes me sound old and all that, but back in the day, when the issues were in like the 30s and the 40s and the 50 numbers, if you will, of issues, we used to have spin-off miniseries, even just for a few months. I mean, they did Sally, they did Tails, they did Knuckles before he got his own series. They did one on the Death Egg, the original Death Egg, called Quest, I think. To me, they could have done the same thing for Genesis, and it would have made more sense. Now, I do understand the reason Genesis had to take place the way it did, because it continues on basically from 225, and also they needed to do something for the anniversary. So again, I can understand that, but still, to me, I think Genesis could have been done better, if you will, could have been done better um, had they made it a little bit more separate. Because to me, if you would have separated it in its own miniseries, you could have easily made more. You could have easily put more into it, put more, not just effort, but more development into it, more interesting development, not just for what was going on, but for the characters. But again, like I said, I do understand why it was put in as part of the continuity in the first place, even though, some of the things that took place in it didn't make sense. A lot of fans look at the fact that Sally was able to communicate with the Flickies by singing. They didn't. They felt that was like they felt like Ian Flynn had basically turned Sally into Snow White there. So, but it did have its moments. I mean, I will give it that. I mean, it did have, if you're a Sonic Sally shipper or supporter, it did have its Sonic Sally moments. I mean, I will admit, I am a Sonic Sally supporter, but I'm also the kind of Sonic Sally fan that's like, okay, if they have to be away from each other for a while, if the relationship has to be put on hold, or they have to be broken up for a while and go date other people, even if it's a short-term deal, or even for months, then that's fine with me, as long as the end result probably ends up being them together again. I'm cool with that. So, but to me, Genesis, like I said, it had its moments. It had its moments, and it had its moments, and it had its, it did have its parts that really didn't make no sense, and I will admit it was probably a good way to get new readers interested in the book, and really all for it, if you will, really into the book. So I will give Genesis that much credit right there. I will give it that credit. So to me, Genesis definitely is number 3. The entire arc, not just 226, but all the way, the entire arc, at number 3 on this countdown for the top 5 issues of 2011.